Y'all good? Y'all ready? You guys ready? They ready? No, I was just making sure. Good evening. My name is Colin Tarrant. I'm the board chair of the New Hanover County Planning Board. We'll call the October 3rd, 2024 meeting to order. Just like to welcome the audience that's both here and at home. If I could remind the folks that are here to please turn off all their mobile devices or silence them. If you do plan to speak tonight, please make sure that you've signed in. The meetings tonight will be closed captioned for public broadcast. So if you are speaking, please come up to the microphone and make sure you speak clearly and that you do that directly into the microphone so the folks at home can hear you. We do have an absence tonight. Our fellow board member, Ms. Caitlin Roanhouse, will not be here, but her absence has been excused. At this time, if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. So in accordance with the New Hanover County Board of Commissioners resolution adopting a code of ethics adopted on January 4th, 2016, it is the duty of all county boards and committees to respect and abide by the New Hanover County Code of Ethics in the performance of their duties. More specifically, all planning board members should, number one, obey all applicable laws. Number two, uphold the integrity and independence of the board. Number three, avoid impropriety. Number four, faithfully perform the duties of the office. And number five, conduct the affairs of the board in an open and public manner. It is further the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest as defined in North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D, Section 109. Does any member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board this evening? And if so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any undue participation in the particular matter involved. Okay. The first item on tonight's agenda is a public hearing. The format for tonight's public hearing is that each side will have a total of 20 minutes, 15 minutes for presentations and 5 minutes for rebuttal. As a reminder, this board is only an advisory board. The Board of Commissioners makes the final decision on any of the requests being considered tonight, but public comments tonight can impact a recommendation and what may ultimately be presented to the commissioners. The public hearing item for tonight's meeting will go forward to the County Commissioners meeting tentatively scheduled for Monday, November 18th, 2024. The meeting will begin at approximately 4 p.m. and will be held here at the New Hanover County Historic Courthouse. The Planning Board representative scheduled for that meeting is Hanson Matthews. At this time, we'll move forward with agenda number one, item number one. As stated previously, this is a public hearing. It's a rezoning request. Z24-20, a request by Cindy Wolf with Design Solutions as applicant on behalf of ZCH Investments LLC as property owner to rezone approximately 11.26 acres located at 4200 Castlehane Road from the R20 Residential District to the CZD CB Community Business District for the use of outdoor recreation establishment. At this time, we'll hear from staff. Ms. Doss.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Yes, located at 4200 Castlehane Road, the parcel is zoned R20 residential. As you can see here, parcels in the vicinity are zoned residential, commercial, industrial, and planned development. Currently, the site is undeveloped. There are existing residences on either side of the property, and another adjacent parcel to the south has been rezoned recently for a business park. Here's an aerial photo with images of the property from different angles. Here are examples representative of the current R20 residential district. These are examples of indoor and outdoor recreation establishments. And here you have the applicant's concept plan. Excuse me. The proposed office and rental counter is located near Castlehane Road. The miniature golf area is just here to the south. Tee boxes for the driving range are located here. Chipping and putting greens across the way on the northern edge of the property. At the back of the property is the maintenance shed. The proposed septic tank is located within the driving range area. And the proposed location for the stormwater pond is located between the parking lot and Castlehane Road. The property currently has full access onto Castlehane Road. There's one state transportation improvement project in the area to widen Castlehane Road. However, it's currently unfunded at this time. We have confirmed with the WMPO that the right-of-way acquisition is not scheduled for 2025. The proposed development would generate slightly more traffic than what the property is currently zoned for and is still well below the threshold that triggers a requirement for a traffic impact analysis. The site is located on Castlehane Road, just north of the I-140 interchange. Since the area nearby has seen an increase in commercial development, the property is less likely to be developed for residential use. As prescribed by the county's UDO, landscape buffers will be provided between the proposed development and adjacent single-family uses. And lighting conditions proposed by the applicant include limiting the height of the flood lighting and limiting the hours of use for the flood lighting to the hours of operation of the driving range. The comprehensive plan designates this property as being part of the community mixed use and the employment center place types. Community mixed use includes commercial uses and encourages infill development. Employment center allows for commercial uses that can support nearby employment centers and includes recreational uses. The proposed use would support the surrounding commercial and residential uses along the Castlehane Road corridor and future growth anticipated within the area. Staff's recommendation is based on policy guidance of the 2016 Comprehensive Plan, zoning considerations, and technical review. The three proposed conditions are related to limiting the use to miniature golf and driving range, limiting the hours of operation, and limiting the lighting height and hours of use. Staff is recommending approval because the proposed district would limit uses to those appropriate for the area and includes conditions that reduce impacts to adjacent residents. Should the rezoning be approved, the development of the site will be subject to additional development review. This concludes my presentation. Mr. Mike Kozlowski of the WMPO, Mr. Tim Lowe of County Engineering, and Mr. Dustin Fensk of Environmental Health are here to answer any questions. And the applicant is here and has prepared a presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Doss. Are there any questions for staff at this time? All right. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll hear from the applicant, Ms. Wolf.
Thank you very much. My name's Cindy Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of the two young men that bought this property and are seeking to have a business. You might have seen by the report of the project meeting that they had some larger aspirations initially prior to us meeting with adjacent neighbors and that sort of thing. It was what you would sort of define as a garage village, a sort of upscale type of storage, but larger units, that sort of thing. As we talked to staff and just in general, the concept changed, and this is sort of an alternative type of use that was attractive to them, and certainly probably more cost-effective as a starter. As Amy pointed out, there have been rezonings along this corridor of late. A lot of them are contractor offices. This is undeveloped land, but the problem here is there is no sewer and water. So without sewer and water, residential development is obviously very limited. So this is the concept of what they are seeking to have approved. It's intended to be family-friendly, you know, driving ranges in our area, other than a few, and very few, at either the private golf courses or I think down to Beau Rivage. There just aren't driving ranges around anymore. So this came up on their radar as a sensible use. And I'd venture to say that a use like this is also sort of a space holder. When sewer and water is available to this area, I can certainly see some other types of development. But basically, entrance onto Castle Hayne Road, parking lot, the opportunity for miniature or putt-putt golf, and then the driving range. One of the things that came up in a public note in opposition to this had to do with floodplain. We are nowhere near any of floodplain areas. You can see those off to the sides. The other comment had to do with septic system. They have done their initial due diligence. Obviously, this was just a draft, but they have worked with environmental specialists. These areas, I'll admit, the soils are very rough out around here. It's why I think there aren't more homes. But they were able to identify an area that's sort of the high point of the site that was eligible for the septic system design. This was designed, as you can see, basically for a little bit smaller situation with 1 employee, 2 public restrooms, around 500 gallons per day. For this use, they'll have to go through the health department process, probably double the size of the septic system, but we don't feel that that's any impediment to moving forward with everything. For example, a stadium, the requirements for gallons per day for a stadium are 5 gallons per seat. Let's just say that this particular course handles 200 people at one time, which I think is extensive. It would still just be twice the size of that septic system, because 200 at 5 gallons a day is 1,000 gallons per day. So just wanted to point that out, that we're not going into this blind as far as the septic system. Lighting came up. The obvious shoebox lighting, which meets the dark sky criteria, is what's used for security around the parking lot. But then a driving range, because there are some night hours, especially in the spring, summer, and fall, would be are limited, and all lighting has to meet the requirements of the county, which says it cannot go beyond the boundaries of the site. So we have, or would agree to the heights that Amy had in her report. So with that, we certainly think this rezoning is consistent. It's reasonable in the public interest. Goals for a vibrant economy encourage continued efforts to attract new businesses. The proposed development is a low-impact infill type of development, and it's all along a major roadway. The proposed use can provide for family-friendly recreational activities, enhance the characters area. The one thing I would ask, if this moves forward with a positive motion, is the condition for the hours. I made an error in that sort of offer to Amy and the staff of what they would be willing to. On Sundays, probably most of you on this panel are golfers. Not waiting until noon to start is sort of counterproductive to the business, we believe. And so we'd like to change that time on Sundays to the same 9 to 8. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone from the board have questions for Ms. Wolf at this time?
I have a few. Thank you, Ms. Wolf.
Mr. Hipp?
Will the range be netted?
No, that's extremely expensive. You can obviously see there's nothing there. The property to our southwest has been zoned for a business park, but if you recall that site plan, all of that area was listed as conservation because it was dead as wetlands. We have a letter that there are no wetlands on this site, so the possibility of their project expanding would still come before you. But that entire boundary along the southwest is a ditch. will be, as you saw in the site plan, dedicating a public drainage easement because it does drain surrounding properties. So we feel that on both sides, there is enough of the buffering to leave the existing vegetation. But in addition to that, it's, I guess, who are we protecting with the netting? I mean, it's more the business sense of, you know, they're going to do whatever's necessary to keep the balls in the site, to a certain extent, obviously, if you're a duffer like me. I
Yeah.
mean, who knows where it's going to go?
I am.
But I did want to also bring up that we understand
Uh-huh.
the septic system, of course, is within the driving range. So what will happen is it will have to be fenced, and any ball retrieval there won't be one of those, you know, caged picker-uppers. They'll have to walk in there. So just, we also understand that.
Well, my only comment to that would be, you know, we work hard to keep light from spilling onto adjacent properties. Golf balls, a whole nother thing. There's nothing there now, but there will be something there in the future. But that was one question. The second was the tee box area. Is that proposed to be covered? or
No.
open? Okay.
We're not proposing any structures other than the office and the maintenance building.
And then the last.
And we have committed not to have any type of a structure at all as far as multi-level.
The last question is the shed. That's, you meet the setbacks and separations and all
Yes.
that for that shed? Okay. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have a question for Ms. Wolf at the moment?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There is not anyone signed up to speak in opposition to this project. Is there anyone here who would like to be heard in opposition? Seeing no one, Ms. Wolf, you do have additional time if you'd like to use it.
I don't need it, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll open up the floor for board discussion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, and this is for staff. What is the requirement regarding golf balls going onto an adjacent property? I mean, to me, that sounds, I play golf, and those neighbors should worry about me if I'm going out there to get golf balls. So what is the requirement? Trespassing or?
I don't believe we have a requirement for netting around driving ranges.
Yeah, we have no standard. I will turn it over to our attorney, Ms. Richards, to speak about what other civil types of legal provisions may be in place.
There's a theory about trespassed property, and it's actually a golf ball case.
So it usually is, if you live at a golf course, you should expect that to happen. This would be the reverse. That's not usually litigated as much because as of right now, there's no one that would really be too fearful of it, except maybe those two houses up front if someone shanks it to the back. But I would say that that would be between the owner of the property versus the owner of the business. That shouldn't necessarily be in your purview at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
This is really for staff. From a tree canopy, tree preservation, can you talk a little bit, Amy, real quick? I mean, obviously, I don't have a diameter of trees, I don't have a survey of trees, but I see a lot of trees, and obviously, we're doing a driving range, you have to clear a lot of trees. And I understand that from a business side, but just kind of maybe talk through that through the ordinance of how that would go through the TRC and maybe kind of a mitigation side.
Yes, they would be required to submit or to apply for a tree removal permit and submit the trees and types of trees, size of trees, right, whether the trees are regulated, all of that's required in the tree removal permit. And if mitigation is required, then they'll have to follow through with that. The applicant may, Cindy may know more about the trees that are out there on the site. I've not walked the site, so.
Yeah, Cindy, just real quick, I mean, what are we looking at out there?
There is a tree survey on top of the site plan, and basically, I went through it so it has been surveyed and it has been tree surveyed. I have the list. There are probably 24 or so that satisfy the significant criteria. Nothing was heritage or whatever we call the next level up. So certainly they are aware that, that was one of the first things they asked me about and why I went through that checklist. But you'll see on the plan, there was a clearing already done for the purpose of the septic system, and that was an approved clearing to get in there and test the soils. But yes, there will be mitigation as required by any other. It's an essential site improvement, so they can't keep them from clearing, but they will have to mitigate anything that satisfies the significant criteria.
Thank you.
I have a question for Ms. Wolf about the perimeter on the buffer. How wide is that going to be where the trees are?
It is a required 20-foot buffer to both of those, to the northeast side, because that is residentially zoned property.
Okay.
To the south side, there would be no buffer, but as I pointed out, there's a ditch there. And so we have no reason to get into there and clear it. So it's approximately 20 to 30 feet wide along that property boundary.
Okay, so both of them have at least about 20 feet on each side.
Yes. Then the rear, it is also zoned residential, so it would have the 20-foot also.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Ms. Hine. A question for Ms. Wolf. It may be in the package, I didn't see it. What is the width of the tract? Is it 200 feet, 300 feet?
Yeah, I apologize, I don't have anything that's booted up to that where I could actually read it. But,
I didn't see anything to scale off of or attempt to get an approximate.
Certainly the site plan.
It appears based on the site plan scale, it's roughly 300 feet.
Thank you.
300?
Yeah, just based on that scale.
Okay, thank you.
And based on what he had explained, they were looking at the 220 to 230 range as far as the width of the range. They did a bunch of research with different driving ranges and facilities up and down the coast, and so that's where we got to where we are.
So Clark, you can't keep it within the width of a football field?
No.
You better be in the middle.
No.
So we did get at least one public comment, and I know, Cindy, you referred to some of the concerns regarding septic, and the public comment that we received had some concerns about the fact that the property doesn't perk, or some of the impacts that potentially allowing, I'm trying to parse through the comment itself, but that some of the impacts that allowing a commercial use in this particular property may have on the ability of the neighbors to utilize a septic system or to expand on their own property. Is that
That I
something
didn't get out of the paragraph, but if
Okay.
that's the case, I would defer to the health department. It's all individually tested and permitted, so there's nothing, it would be a little different. Obviously we'll have a well, but that would have no bearing if we needed to go back to that map where I had the floodplain shown. The White Trust property is directly behind us, the part that is vacant, and I believe, I don't know whether theirs is classified as wetlands or not, but there's nothing that a septic and well on a particular site has impacts on an adjacent that is, what I'm gonna say, enforceable. I don't know of any impacts that they make on one another, but we found some soils that are satisfactory.
And just to follow that up, that would be something that you would also have to show at technical review as well, right?
Absolutely, and not begin construction of the septic system until it is certified for a certain amount of use and, designed.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. Rebecca. What is the status, if there is a status, of any planned extension of water and sewer in that particular area of South Castle?
There isn't any plan to my knowledge. We can double check some of that information, but I'm not aware of anything in that particular location of Castlehane.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Hahn.
I also have a question for staff. Ms. Wolf had mentioned the adjustment to the hours of operation on Sunday. Does staff have an issue with that? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one more thing, and it relates to the septic, and I just wanted it said so everyone hears it, that the septic field itself and the ability to do a septic field is reviewed and approved by the health department.
Correct.
So if it needs to be bigger than what is shown on the application, or if it needs to be adjusted within the property line, all that is reviewed and approved by the county. I just want to make sure that was said out loud.
No, I appreciate that.
Understood that.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Hip.
Mr. Hip.
I believe there's somebody, county staff member in the audience who can speak to that. And since we did receive a letter and objection based on that, if you could maybe elaborate and make this person feel a little bit more at ease.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm Dustin Fensky. I'm the supervisor of on-site water protection for the county, and pretty much what that means is we're the well and septic people for the county. We are one of the permitting agencies now for septic systems. We are not the end-all be-all anymore. The state laws changed probably about 6-7 years ago, where actually private consultants and certain engineers now can permit septic systems as well. So I did see where the Davy Group, which was the soil scientists that were involved with the preliminary septic evaluation, they do have people on staff that could actually issue permits as well. So one way or another, they will get a permit, but it will either be done through our department, an authorized wastewater evaluator, which is usually a licensed soil scientist, or an wastewater engineer in conjunction with a soil scientist. So one of those three options, if they do one of those, they will actually be approved for the septic system. A lot of commercial properties go that route just to kind of leave us out of the equation. Consultants can do a lot more with guiding people as to where things need to be than we can. We're pretty much a yes-no type agency. If you have an area, we say yes or no. We can't really tell you to, we can put it over here and it'll work, or if we change this property line, it'll work, or something like that. That's where the consultants come in handy, and they can actually issue permits now. So it's still have to have a septic permit, but it's multiple people that can do it now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any further board discussion on this matter? Hearing none, Ms. Wolf, if you will approach the podium. At this time, would you like to withdraw the petition, ask for a continuance, or request that the board move forward with a vote?
I'd request the board move forward with the vote with the consideration, please, about those hours of operation, if possible.
Okay. The applicant has requested for the board to move forward at this time. If there is a motion,
Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Hahn?
I move to recommend approval of the proposed rezoning. I find it to be consistent with the purposes and intent of the comprehensive plan because the rezoning provides for the types of uses recommended in both the community mixed use and employment center place types. I also find recommending approval of the rezoning request is reasonable and in the public interest because the application limits uses to those which are more appropriate for the area, and additional conditions reduce impact on adjacent residential areas. Proposed conditions: number one, the only permitted use is for a miniature golf establishment and golf driving range. 2, hours of operation are limited to A, 9 a.m. through 8 p.m., Sunday through Thursday, B, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday. C is stricken. Item 3, in addition to UDO section 5.5 exterior lighting, which regulates max illumination levels and full fixture cutoffs, the following will apply. A, lighting poles for security lighting in the parking area and miniature golf areas would be limited to a 16-foot height. B, lighting poles for flood lighting of the driving range would be limited to 35 feet in height and turned off outside of the hours of operations. C, lighting fixtures shall be numbered such that adequate levels of lighting are maintained, but that light spillage and glare are not directed at adjacent properties, neighboring areas, or motorists.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. Mr. Avery is seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Ms. Wolf, thank you very much. The only other matter that we have on our regular items of business is a Unified Development Ordinance, or UDO Maintenance Amendment Concepts presentation.
Thank you, Chair, members
Mr.
of the
Farrell.
board. So we're here this evening to get feedback on some potential text amendment concepts to the UDO. The department has been regularly providing maintenance or housekeeping amendments since the completion of the UDO project in 2020 to ensure the ordinance stays up to date with current practice for development in the unincorporated county. I'll provide an overview of the proposed amendments to see if the board wants to move forward at this time, and based on your feedback, we will finalize the draft amendment language that will be released for public comment at a future meeting. Following that public comment period, the updated drafts will be presented to the board again for a public hearing. So staff has identified 5 different amendments to the UDO. The first is an update to the accessory dwelling unit standards so that they match the building code requirements by general statute. Single-family residential development has to be regulated the same as any other housing type for single-family, so that has a limitation on materials and things like that. So it's a limit staff or the county's ability to regulate certain things. The second amendment is to clarify how we apply the street yard landscaping standards for changes of use. We do have situations where off-street parking may not be necessarily required for, let's say, an RV or boat storage lot, and so we would need to be able to apply a street yard landscaping if it's along a corridor or on a road. The third is to provide additional flexibility for relocating parking lot landscaping where there are conflicts with utilities. Currently, we have a lot of flexibility built into the ordinance for the parking lot landscaping, or rather for landscaping section, where we can administratively allow shifts to accommodate alternative designs when there are issues. Unfortunately, in the parking lot standards for landscaping, we don't have that particular clause, And so this would add the ability for staff to say, okay, well, there's a utility easement here, we need to move the tree a little out of the way and still accomplish the intent of the ordinance. The fourth is to clarify the mixed-use residential standards for commercial districts. This is related to special use permit requirements for residential uses in commercial zoning districts. And the fifth is to investigate reducing the required parking ratio for warehouse uses. Right now, it's 1.5 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of warehousing. We have been experiencing a lot of feedback from the development community that that might be a little high. We've had applicants who have submitted parking studies to reduce that, showing that there is not necessarily a need in some instances, so we would be looking into that reduction as well. Those are the 5 we have proposed. So if you have any feedback on those, any input or thoughts, we'd be glad to hear them now. We would use that to inform our drafting, and then we'll be bringing back again the drafts for public release in a month.
Can you go back to one slide just to bring those back up so we can reference them? Thank you. Did you have a question?
The bottom one, Mr. Farrell, the reducing parking ratios for warehouse uses, would you please repeat those ratios and the concerns that people have?
Yes, so currently the ordinance requires 1.5 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet of a warehouse, like an industrial warehouse like we see on 421. So if you had a 50,000 square foot warehouse facility, that would be 75 parking spaces. And we're finding that the business community is not needing nearly as much of that parking for employees or anything like that. It's not that these businesses or these types of things have day-to-day customers like you would expect like a commercial use, and especially with the level of automation that goes on these days in some warehousing.
I can see where y'all are coming from with that, and that's a very observant and legitimate concern. My only thought on that is that there's a huge difference in the market for a 5 or 10,000 square foot warehouse to say a 40 to 100,000 square foot warehouse. I mean, you can find companies who have the same staffing for a 5,000 square foot warehouse that you would have for 50,000 feet. So, as someone who runs into leasing second generation space, my concern is if we don't break it up into 2 different sizes, the smaller warehouses, and there are a lot of them around here, 10,000 square feet and under, if we don't have a different requirement for those than we have for the really large ones, then we may be cutting some of these smaller places way short on parking in the future.
So this would be a parking minimum.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a parking maximum. So if a business would like to what we call over park, which would be provide additional parking above the minimum requirement, that is certainly within their ability to do.
Okay, cool enough.
Rebecca, quick question. These are all staff-driven text amendments based on input and over the last couple months that y'all received?
Correct, and to be honest, there are probably less based on input than they are from frequently occurring questions that we get as part of the development review process and our regular customer service.
Okay, so none of these are commissioner-generated at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any additional feedback from Mr. Farrell?
After looking at your list, Robert, reducing parking ratios for warehouse uses is a great idea. We build warehouses, and quite frankly, we just have to have too many park places. It just doesn't make any sense. Clarifying mixed-use residential standards for commercial districts, certainly needs some clarity, because I don't really understand how that works anyway from that last case that we had. The first one seems pretty innocuous. I applaud the idea of additional administrative flexibility for landscaping that conflicts with required utilities. We had a situation recently where we had some issues with our street yard and the amount of street yard that we would provide. And fortunately, the county used some administrative flexibility, and it really helped us get over that hump. And I appreciate that immensely for the owners and future developers that may come around. I would like to understand a little bit more about clarifying the applicability of street yards for standards changes of use. I understand what changes of uses do, and you go back and look at your rules and say, well, it's a change of use, they got to do this to comply, they got to do this to comply. And they may already have a ton of street yards to start with, and they may not meet the current requirements.
So we do have some provisions about, redevelopment of existing sites. And actually, in anticipation for that, I included this. This is the section that we're specifically talking about, where it says street yard landscaping is required for new construction, expansions of existing structures, and changes of use whenever additional off-street parking is required. So let's say you have an existing structure, kind of going back to the parking ratio minimums. You have an existing commercial structure. It was a warehouse that had 1.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. The use changes to maybe a manufacturing type of use that might require 2.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. So that development would be required to provide additional parking. When you provide additional parking, you need to provide the street yard that goes along with that. There are some instances where we have vacant property, so undeveloped. A new use is going in, but that use may not have off-street parking. A good example that we've run into in the past is an RV and boat storage facility. It's a vacant lot, it's a fenced lot, it's got kind of, areas to store boats. That's not a new construction, that's not, it's a change of use from the vacant property to a boat storage facility, but there's no off-street parking, so there would be no requirement for a street yard. So as you're going down the road, you have a boat storage without landscaping along the road. That's the kind of thing that we're looking at here.
Robert, the only thing I would say to that in your concept there on the warehouse is that we need to also take into stormwater into account.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could, if the site's already developed and it's already essentially concrete asphalt, and there's really nothing that can be done as far as stormwater, then it may limit actually the change of the use. It may be very helpful for us to see some different kind of examples.
Sure.
Of how this would kind of play out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Have you had that situation pop up on any projects recently?
We have. Yes, sir.
Chair. Chair.
Ms. Robb.
I was just kind of listening to the back and forth on the warehousing and parking ratio issue, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, and Hanson has a lot of expertise and has dealt with this. But the concept that popped in my head when I heard the response about these are just minimum limitations, there's no maximum. It sounds like there could be a problem that maybe we want to consider a minimum number of parking spaces at the 10,000 square foot level. I don't know. It sounded like potentially if enacting the ratios, the smaller buildings could have too small a parking, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on this. It's just a reaction from what I heard Hanson say.
So, Mr. Farrell, in this example of a 10,000 square foot building that's flex space, 1.5 spaces per 1,000, so it's 15?
Correct.
And that would be the minimum?
Correct.
Okay. That should suffice.
Is that good? Okay.
Yeah, that should suffice.
So, one more question. Will the ratio 1.5 to 1,000, is that disappearing, and what are you doing with that?
Well, based on the feedback from this board, it would kind of give me the direction to go in. Sounds like we have,
I think that ratio is way over, and you agree with that. I think it ought to be based more on employee counts, employee usage, and service deliveries and trucks deliveries. We can easily figure that out. We built a 150,000 square foot warehouse and only has 5 people working there. They run that whole show, and they don't need 5 parking places. And it might need 10 at the best. And they got a truck court out back, so that's taken care of.
and that's the purpose of these kind of introductory concept discussions, is so that, you know, if the direction from the board said, well, hold on, we like the parking ratio the way it is, well, that would tell staff, we'll take that one off the list. If the feedback I'm hearing is that we want to pursue this, we'll definitely go and start doing the research in how other jurisdictions address this issue, you know, what alternatives there might be for that ratio, and we'll bring back a draft. And then at that point, the board can say, you know, with a hard number, if we say, all right, we have a new proposal, not 1.5, but X, and then the board can say, well, maybe X minus 2 or something.
Mr. Farrell, just for clarity, the North Carolina State Building Code, they set things like exits, toilet facilities based on occupant load, and it's typically on so many square feet per occupant. But in warehouse, manufacturing, they use the term code uses the term storage, industrial, or storage and factory. There's actually a clause that allows the user to request a reduction in those occupant load based on the actual workforce. My point of all that is it might be that is a way to address it, is based on an occupant load, not a square footage, as Mr. Avery was suggesting.
That is, so we will certainly look into that. That's great. Thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other suggestions for Mr. Farrell? I think we've provided him some good feedback, especially on the warehouse parking situation. Mr. Farrell, you have anything else for us?
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Roth?
I don't believe I have anything, but I do want to thank you for your time earlier today at the joint meeting. I really appreciate y'all being there, the feedback you provided, and y'all will be getting this information in the synopsis, so if you have any questions or you want to talk through anything further, please let me know.
Well, I know I can speak for the entire board by saying we appreciate all the hard work that you and your staff did, and always do for us, but especially in particular today at the joint meeting. I think it was a meaningful discussion that both this board as well as the commissioners will be able to take some good things from and hopefully move forward with some productive ideas. Does anyone, any other members of the board have anything for us tonight?
I don't.
All right. At this time, does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.